Hi, welcome to another episode of The Awkward Camera Enthusiast, this time coming to you with an attempt at lighting and notes. Hi, today we're just going to do a quick video talking about a camera I touched on earlier, in an earlier video, but didn't really talk about a lot that I just think it's a really interesting one because it's a little bit one of a kind, and that is this heavy bastard right here. This is the Fairchild Cinephonic 8. This is, as far as I've been able to find, the only regular old 8mm, double-8 millimeter camera ever released that recorded sync sound. This was released in 1960. It was May of 1960, according to a paper presented to the Audio Engineering Society in October of that year. And this was the first, and I believe the only, double-8 camera ever to record sync sound. Now, obviously, some Super 8 cameras came out years and years later that operated basically on the same principle. But this is a beast. This is a regular old 8mm camera. It's all metal. 3-lens turret here. Mine, unfortunately, came without the other 2 lenses. But this thing just required so much power. It was not a wind-up camera, obviously, because they were, you had to power the sound recorder too. Ran on a nickel-cadmium rechargeable battery in here. So on this side here, you've got your headset, your headphones for monitoring your sound. You got your microphone plug. You plugged in a microphone on a long cord. Obviously, there's no onboard mic because the noise of the camera motor would interfere with the sound recording. You got your run and off switch here. This is, push it over here, the camera's on, pull it back, camera's off. You got a volume control here, so you can control the volume of the sound as you monitor it through the headphones. And then on the bottom, in addition to, this is where the battery went, you got this tripod mount, and by the feel of this camera, you need a pretty sturdy tripod to keep this thing from the tripod buckling under its weight. This is a tank. Now, it worked pretty much on the same principle as the Super 8 sound cameras worked, only years and years earlier. I'll take the film door off here, and as you can see, there's still some film inside it. When I picked this up at a junk shop, there was still some film inside it. And of course, here's your shutter. Right, here's the film gate. And then the sound recording head right here is placed several frames away from the film gate. Because obviously, you need your sound recording to be smooth. It can't be jumpy and stuttery like it might be when the film goes across the gate. Now, this required special film. This required special Cinephonic 8mm film that worked a lot like the sound film from the Super 8 sound days. It had magnetic stripes, and I'm not certain that my camera's resolution is good enough to pick this up, but I'm going to try. If you can see that little, it's not a reflection, it might look like it, but there's a little darker line along the outer edge of the sprocket hole. That is a magnetic stripe, and that's a stripe of magnetic sound recording tape. Now, just like any other straight 8 camera, here's your take-up reel. You get to the end of the reel, and you'd flip these reels over, run it through again, then they'd, at the lab, develop it, split it down the middle, splice it together. You got 25-foot reel of 16mm wide film becomes 50 feet of 8mm. But as I said, the sound is recorded along the magnetic stripe right here, just like it was later with the Super 8 cameras. Here's the sound recording head. And your sound is recorded at a different point on the tape, the film, than your image is recorded. So you might be wondering, I know I did until somebody explained it, and I slapped my forehead and thought, Why didn't I think of that myself? It sounds so obvious when it's explained, but just in case it's not obvious to you, it certainly wasn't to me until somebody explained it. Here's your image, and here's your sound. The number of frames between the image and sound would be about a second worth of frames. So why isn't the sound a second off from the image? Why is it synced? It's because the sound projectors had the audio component just as far away from the shutter as they are in the camera. So it's playing back the audio. The offset is the same, so the audio matches up with the visual. I hope I explained that clearly. Like I said, when I first heard about that, I'm like, well, why isn't it out of sync? And then I saw a video that just said, well, it's because the audio and the visual recording equipment is 16 frames away from each other, and so is the playback equipment. So this was really, it was a really neat system, and it prefigured the sound Super 8 by a number of years. So why wasn't it around very long? Why did it fail? Well, it's hard for me to say. I can take an educated guess, but oddly enough, it's a non-trivial thing to find a lot of information on this particular camera online. You can find a lot of photos. You can find a lot of old Fairchilds, like on eBay for sale, but it's not as simple as a Google search to find out a lot about the history behind the camera. It is a Google search, but you've really got to dig. So my theory is, number one, obviously, Super 8 came along in 1965, just 5 years after this was released, and it was just an easier format than the 8mm, to say nothing of sound 8mm. So I think, even silent Super 8 just rapidly eclipsed even sound 8mm because it was just so much easier to deal with. Number two, the expense. This is a neat system, but this is really for serious hobbyists only who had a lot of money to throw around. This was expensive. You paid through the teeth for this, or through the nose, through some part that it would be uncomfortable to pay through is what you paid through to get this. This camera in 1960 sold for $250, and the projector sold for another $250. Actually, I believe the projector was $10 more, so the projector would have been $260, I believe. Now, that might not seem crazy today, but you got to remember that was $1960. Now, $250 in 1960 is equivalent to more than $2,300 in 2021 money. That's when this is being recorded. So you got $2,300 in 2021 money. The cartridges, not the cartridges, excuse me, this is pre-Super 8, but the reels, the film reels, cost $7.50 a piece for the rolls. $7.50 a piece before processing. That's $70 a roll before you've even started processing. You think Super 8's expensive today. This sound Cine 8mm, this special 8mm roll was expensive. As I said, this is $70 before you even send it in for processing in 2021 money. That's a lot of money. That's money, you're creeping up on, just for the camera and the projector setup, you're creeping to within shouting distance of $5,000 in 2021 money, just to hear your home movies. If somebody had told me I'd like you to spend $5,000 just to hear your home movies, I would have just said, I'll just do funny voices over them while I watch them. That's a lot of money you could put toward a decent used car, probably. So this was, I'm sure, wonderful for the families who had it, but the families who had it probably hired butlers for their butlers. Preserving family memories, a pastime reserved for the wealthy. So that's my theory. My theory was just, A, Super 8, for all intents and purposes, just destroyed this format anyway because it was so much easier. And B, the expense. You know, you had to buy a certain specific type of film. I mean, you could run silent film through this, but if I've just paid $5,000 for a sound film setup, by God, I'm not running silent film through it. So you had to buy a special expensive type of film to put in your special expensive camera that ran on a special expensive battery, and then you had to run it through a special expensive projector. And by the time you paid for all of that, you were basically recording your children slowly starving to death because you spent your food money on this camera. Seriously, people, don't spend your kids' food money on cameras. But despite its almost instant obsolescence and a truly Scrooge McDuck-worthy price tag, I just wanted to talk a little more about this camera, show it off a little, because I just think it's interesting. I had no idea that there were 8mm home movie cameras that could record sync sound just on board until I ran across this thing in a junk shop. It was, I think, $12, $13, so how the mighty have fallen. Of course, it's non-functional, no battery. I have no idea how the motor works. I bought this one specifically for display. But I just wanted to talk a little more about it because it was an interesting little side note to home photography history. It should have made a bigger splash than it did. It's a lot like, if you have not checked out the Analog Resurgence channel, check it out. The Analog Resurgence guy, it's a great channel. Does a video on Polavision, instant developing home movies. And Polaroid released, this is a Super 8 type format where you could slot it into a viewer and it would develop instantly. And they released it right before consumer level VCRs became widely available. So it's just one of those instances of bad timing, much like this. Bad timing coupled with a price tag that would make grandma swallow her dentures. So unfortunately, this little baby never really took off the way it could have if it had been more reasonably priced and its timing had been a little better. But it's an interesting little side note. I just wanted to talk a little about it. So that's it for this episode of The Awkward Camera Enthusiast, and hopefully I will be back with something equally or more enlightening. Bye.